Well, hi guys. Sorry I haven't been around a little bit. Hadn't made a video for a while, but we'll try to get back into things. I wanted to talk about a few other tips today. Kind of ran across something and I thought I would talk about it. On some knobs that you may get on a radio, they may have set screws. Those screws that you have to loosen up and take out, or loosen them so you can get the knob off. And a lot of times they'll be slotted, or just a regular screwdriver fits in there. But once in a while with a slotted screw you might run into one that is part of it's broke off. And I ran into that on one. These knobs will have, a slotted screw like that. These here happen to have two, but one of these, it was broke off on one side. Someone had gotten strong with it, or when they was trying to loosen it or something, but it had broke off. And I was managed to be able to get it out. It wasn't really tight, so I was able to get it out, and then I took and put a nut on it so I could put it in a vise, and kind of bring this up a little closer. It'll stay in focus. And what I did was I just took a hacksaw after I got it in the vise. I took a hacksaw and just let the hacksaw do the work and just cut at it until I cut a new slot in it. So now that a screwdriver will fit it. And see if we can get it out of here. So that's all I did. I left the one end still on there, but that's all you got to do. If you can get it out where you can get it in a vise, one little tip is find yourself a nut to put on there. That way you won't damage the threads. And then put it in your vise, and don't get strong with it. Just let your hacksaw do the job, and you can cut a new slot in them. Now you can also once in a while run into just regular like flathead screws slotted that were never really formed correctly, that make it a burger to get them out. They become real difficult. I don't know if you can focus. There we go. You notice these two here, one's not real deep on one side. Now the other side's not too bad, but one side it's not too deep. Now you could take and put this in a vise, or since it's wood screw, you can screw it in a piece of wood. Say like this, just get you an old chunk of wood and just screw it in there. This one here, I'll show you what you can do here in a minute. But you can screw it into, you get it out, and then you can screw it into some wood or something, put it in your vise, and use a hacksaw and straighten that up, get it a little deeper so that you can get a better bite on it. Now the one thing warning that you want to be careful of, on these are not so bad, but you want to definitely leave some meat left on them right underneath the screw head here. So you want to leave a little meat there. Magnetic screwdriver is not the best thing to use for a pointer, but because if you cut these down too far, then when you go to tighten it up, it'll just break off. So you don't want to get it down more than past about halfway to the down here to the shoulder. But you know, just cut it that depth right there would be perfectly good. So that one just needs to be straightened. But some of these can be really very shallow. And you can do it round top, you know, rounded screws, kind of like these round-headed screws too. So basically what you're going to do is you take and put her in a vise, the wood, after you screw the screw into it. And take and your hacksaw and again, sorry about the noise, but just let it do the work for you. Good sharp hacksaw works really nice. But we've cut that one down quite a bit now. That's about as far as we'd want to go. But now a screwdriver will fit in there really solid. And the other nice thing about wood is, with using a wood screw, if you're working with wood screws, is say you got some that's a little dirty, maybe a little bit of corrosion on them or something, and you want to clean them up, but how do you hold them? You can use different rust removers and get them cleaned up. They usually leave a little bit of residue, but you can take and put them in something like this and use into wood and just start cleaning them with a brush or sandpaper or anything to clean them up, and the wood will hold them nice and solid until you get them so they're looking pretty decent. And you just keep cleaning out either with a brush or sandpaper or a file or something, and you can clean the tops of them up. So it's a nice little tip. With wood screws, you can put them into wood and clean them up. If they're brass screws, use a brass brush or something of that nature. Metal screws, you can use a steel brush. If you got machine screws like these, then just get you a couple nuts to lock on and put them in the vise, and then you tighten up on the nut and you won't hurt the threads. Now what if you have a problem with a Phillips screw? Say that I didn't have any that was real bad, but I did have a couple. They look kind of like this. What do you do with that? Well, what you can do, and I don't have any nuts to fit this, so this screw is a lot newer screw, so I don't really care about it. But what you can do is put it in your, fasten it down in something. Again, some nuts would probably definitely handy, but we're just going to try to set it in here and just tension it down just a little bit like that. And you can try take a punch. If you got a punch, it'll fit pretty much most of the top. If not, you can use your hammer itself, and that one will probably fit better. Now I've closed it up. Let's see if I can get on it. Oop, a little too close. As you can see, it's closed up now. At that point, and I've got a bit here, number 2 bit. At that point, the bit don't really want to fit, which is fine. You take a bit, something like this. Let me back that off just a little bit so you can see. I'll probably go the wrong way. Yep, I figured I would. And you take the bit, you set it in there so it's right where it needs. A couple smacks with a hammer lightly, and voila, it's in the screw. And you can pop it right back out. Now the screw's back to new, almost like new now. So if you got one that's, and they can be extremely bad, where they're really tore up, you can either smack them with a hammer if you got room to do it, or use a punch and smash them down some so they'll smash back down. And don't worry the fact that your bit won't fit anymore, or a screwdriver. And it's best if you got a screwdriver bit that you can drive back in there. But then you can drive it back in, it'll reform the Phillips head, and you're good to go. Now, some other things about screws. Let's say, you know, a lot of radios and stuff uses, you know, fairly small screws, and you know, like down to like number 4 screws, and number 6s, 8s, and 10s is usually the 4 main ones that you'll find in most radios. You know, a screw's about this size or so, and I'm not sure what size, if that's an actual 6 or 8 for sure. But let's say in your little box of screws and bolts that you saved over time, you find a couple screws that's the right size, thread size, but they're a little long. One nice thing about, if you go out and buy a set of, and this is made by Gardner Bender, but you can buy these at various hardware stores or in automotive stores. But you got your wire strippers here. You've got where you can put on crimp connectors here, various different size ones. But the other thing about these is they've got these little holes down here. And what these are is to thread screws into, and then once you get them threaded to your length, you just squeeze them and it cuts them nice and clean for you. And then you just unscrew them out and it'll reform the threads. On this side is the cutting side, and this side is the thread size. So that's the nice thing about it. It goes down to a number 540 up to number 1024. So it does your size 5, size 6, 8s, and 10s. I guess, yeah, it does have a 440 in there too. This may be metric, I'm not sure. Oh, it don't seem to be. So you screw a screw in here like this, and then you just cut it and take and unscrew it out, kind of work it back and forth as you do, and you've effectively shortened your screw. So now what I would do with this is I'd take a file and just kind of file just a little bit down on the end here, just to taper it just a little bit so a nut will start on it real easy. But that's the nice thing about these, is you can do that and make any size you want in length. So if you do find a screw that's a little too long, you just cut it off. That's what you can do with these. Now, another little tip about hardware is something that I do once in a while. I might go to a yard sale or a flea market or an auction or something, and what I look for is some old furniture, old wood furniture that is falling apart. It's not worth saving. It's nothing good. I mean, if I'm gonna buy, if it's good and I buy it, I'm gonna keep it. But I'm more interested in the hardware in it, because you can get a lot of decent sheet metal screws, hinges, cabinet hinges, and various different tidbits of hardware from old furniture. And you know, a place like a yard sale, if they got an old piece of furniture that's about ready to fall apart, they'll probably give it to you. If not, you know, be dirt cheap. Auctions, they'll go, you know, you'll probably end up with about 5 other boxes of stuff, because they'll throw everything in to just get a bit of a dollar on it. But the thing about it, and you know, they may be rusty screws and stuff, but you know, using rust remover like Evaporust or something like that, or you know, the various different rust removers, let them soak in that, they'll clean right up real nice. That's where these screws came out of an old cabinet, and they cleaned up really nice. You can get hinges, you can get all kinds of different stuff. Now, something for your little tool kit that can come in handy is taps and dies, and they're not that expensive. Here's a few of, they range from, I think, size 4 to size 10. Taps, and you can get these both fine and coarse thread. I think these were like, oh, I don't know, $3.29 a piece. So that if you got, you know, either nuts or threaded holes in your radio chassis or something that's pretty rusty or bad, you can find the right size. You can just go in there and clean them up and get the threads all cleaned up and nice and working good for you. If you got some bolts and screws that you want to keep, maybe there's some brass ones or something like that, you're not sure where you can find, you know, some replacements or whatever reasons, the dies, they're like around $4 a piece. Again, about all the same sizes as those. And these came from a hardware store. They're not real expensive, but they're just kind of nice to have. That way you can clean threads up on the existing hardware that you have, and make it work a lot better for you. Now, one last little thing on hardware. A lot of hardware that you can buy today, as far as screws and especially wood screws and stuff, if you go to home improvement stores, or you know, your big box stores like that, or some hardware stores will have low grade hardware, you will find screws that are not all that well made. Not that the old screws were a lot of times made really good, but the shanks, the threads and stuff were not real deep or anything on a lot of the newer screws today. You can still get good quality screws, but where you want to go is, instead of your big box type home improvement stores like Home Depot or anything like that, you either want to go to a good nationwide hardware store and tell the guy that's in there that you want their top of the line hardware, their best screws and stuff, a lot of times they do have two different classes. Otherwise, you can also go to a woodworker store. In a town or state capital, Des Moines here, which is about 100 miles away, they got what they call a woodensmith store. They've got like 4 or 5 or more around the nation, but there's others out there I know for a fact. But those type stores, not only do they sell a lot of different high quality wood products, including really nice veneer and everything else, but at reasonable prices. But they also sell top-notch hardware. You can get wood screws and machine screws. You can get them in brass. You can get them in rust-proof galvanized metal, but a good quality metal, stainless steel, or any number of different types of materials that are really decent quality. They're going to cost you a little more than what you would going to Home Depot or someplace, but in the end you will like them a lot better because they'll fit in where you're replacing the screws or hardware at a lot better, and they'll look a lot nicer when you're done. So just a little food for thought there. Now, something else I want to talk about. On a previous video I talked about biasing tubes, and I don't know why I didn't think about bringing them out, but we talked about one type of biasing where you use bias cells. If you got a radio that's got bias cells in it, and it's in good shape, it's got the cells in it and they're not destroyed or anything, they're probably okay. I've got a few here, bias cells, and the thing that you can do with these bias cells, as long as they don't get destroyed, like severely corroded up or smashed or busted or anything. There's 2 in a holder that came out of a radio, and here's another one that came out of another type of holder and another type of radio. The biggest thing that happens to them is they dry out. Now, the first thing you need to remember about these cells, they produce pretty much zero current. They're extremely low current. In fact, if you look up an old ad on them, it'll say on the ad that the voltage for them is around plus or minus 10%, but around 1 volt, no current voltage. Okay? In other words, you're using a meter that draws almost no current or very little current to measure them, because they're biasing, and in a general sense the bias circuit of a tube has no current in it, so all the cell has to do is provide a potential. They're a dry cell, there's an acid chemical in there, the outside is kind of a zinc, and then the inside is carbon. They're just a zinc carbon battery, dry cell battery, but they're designed not to really have a whole lot of current, but the acid dries out. They normally have, and I don't think I got any that shows any of it on there. Yeah, there's a little bit here. You can see right about right here, maybe, hopefully. A little bit of the rubber left. There's a rubber seal around there, and that's usually what dries out, and then it starts leaking air in and the fluid dries out. Well, what you can do, several of these were showing 0 voltage whatsoever, and I just took a glass of warm water, fairly hot water out of the tap, and I threw them in it, and they were in there probably about 15 minutes, and they started showing voltage. For the most part, only one is still a little low, and it probably needs to have more moisture in it, but let's see if we can get something to show here. It's kind of hard. That's got 1.2 volts. a lot of these are under 1 volt. .89. So I know 1 is a little low. 0.875. It could have been also just I wasn't getting a good contact on it. 1.2. So all you need to do, 1.1. Yeah, if I rotate a little bit, it's kind of fluctuating. There's 2 in there. These are probably the 2 was showing low, or a little bit low. Just soak them in water. There is 2 rules of thought on it. One is to try to cut a little opening in it, which I tried here. I wanted to test which way was better, because generally I usually just threw them in water and just let them soak overnight. But I thought, well, I'll try. It didn't seem to make a difference cutting a little hole in it. So you don't really need to, because that rubber's pretty well dried out. It's going to soak the water in. But I only left them in there for like 15 minutes. They really need to be left in there for like overnight. And then dry them off. And then if you want to keep them good and working good, then just go in and take you a little bit of silicone or something like that to just caulk around this edge here to seal it up. And then they won't dry out again. You know, and clean up your contact surfaces. You know, zinc corrodes like aluminum does, or copper or anything else. So clean them up and they'll work just fine for you. So unless they're smashed, destroyed, or they just, you know, the zinc is corroded clear through or something, you can use them. Just soak them overnight in water, check them. And if you're getting somewhere around 1 volt, that's perfectly fine. Seal them up around that edge, and you know, clean up your contact surfaces and put them back in your radio, and you're good to go. And they'll last as indefinitely, or until they dry out again, and then they'll just have to re-soak again. But they'll last quite a long time. So I want to just mention that they can be saved. They're actually not shot, they're just dried. And that's all they need is moisture to get them to react and start working again. But they are not designed to apply any real serious current. And again, like I said, the ads, if you look up any ad on these from back in the day when they were selling them, they would tell you that, you know, there's 0 current, that the no current rating for them is about around 1 volt, plus or minus 10% or so. So they made it perfectly clear it's no current in it. So anyway, somehow I managed to always make every video long. I guess I talk too much. We're going to be doing some various videos. I've got a couple things to do, and so coming up, there's going to be a Spartan on here. It's basically restored. I've got a couple little things to do to it yet, but I'll play it. And the cabinet needs more attention than anything else. The radio's fine, but the big thing about it is the power supply in it I can use and tap off of it to get that RCA 20 going. I just need a couple resistors to put in there to drop a couple voltages, and we'll probably either use these bias cells, which I doubt that because I don't have enough, there's not enough here, but I can probably use bias supply off of my sweep generator. It goes up high enough to supply the bias voltages for the to the tubes in there that needs them, and we can get that. Let's see about getting that radio working. So that'll be an upcoming video too. And Then I was requested to do a video, and I'm going to do it. Requested about a video about doing how do you signal trace a new FM radio, or at least a newer, something in solid state. We're going to look at, I don't have any, well I do, the only real new radio I've got is in my car, and I'm not going to pull it out of the car to tear it apart. But what I can do, when I did, was looked up some schematics. So we're going to go through the schematics and tell you how can you trace out a signal through it and find out if there's a problem, where the problem is, and what stage of amplification or what stage of the circuitry it could be at, and how to eliminate. So look forward to that video coming up probably next month. So anyway, I think that's all I got for you today. So thanks for watching, and thank you for my new subscribers, and I'll see you guys on the next video, and you have a good day.